Today I'm playing Going Medieval, a nice colony sim where your faceless little people go medieval. And being a fan of putting weird limitations on my games to make them more interesting, I'm gonna go with one of my favorite limitations that works in so many of these types of games: vegetarianism. But also, can one make a comedy video about going medieval without invoking the cannibal mechanics? I didn't think so. Thus, my vegetarians are actually gonna be cannibal vegetarians. Hunting and eating food derived from animal meat will be strictly forbidden. They shall frolic alongside the critters and live in peaceful harmony with nature. But people meat? Delicious people who have done nothing to earn such respects as the wild animals? So maybe vegetarian isn't the best term here. Pescetarian is a term used for people who stick to a mainly vegetarian diet, but also include fish and shellfish. That word is derived as a portmanteau from the Italian word for fish, pescare, and vegetarian. So maybe we can use the same formula here and use the Italian word for human. Yes, my colony will be the finest congregation of Umanatarians the medieval world has ever seen. And much like many, many great movements throughout history, it all starts with one person. So thus, I will be doing a lone wolf start, slightly modified to give any new settler who arrives a 30% chance of also being qualified for the life of an Umanatarian. Those who arrive with this trait will be welcome to stay, while those who don't will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. This movement is to be started by Analbeigh Canalbeigh. Every good movement needs a powerful heraldry. I thusly created one that proudly illustrates the core tenets of Umanatarianism. A heart, to represent the love Umanatarians share between themselves and the animals. And a bird within that heart, to represent all the animals who we will allow to live. And to represent the laughter that will be had over the joyous feasts of man-meat. A skull of the people who have provided the meat. Hard difficulty, and a random town name of Asterleigh, and we are ready. In Asterleigh, a solitary individual dedicated to vegetarianism set out to create their own colony. Unknown to others, Analbeigh Canalbeigh embraced a unique aspect of their identity, a cannibalistic inclination. Balancing their beliefs, they formed a community that celebrated the interplay between compassion, sustenance, and the cyclical nature of life. Analbeigh is blah 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 blah. We're starting in the winter, so my first order of business is to make shelter for Analbeigh and the dog Volka before it gets too cold. I had Analbeigh chop wood all day until she passed out in the hay. The next day I blueprinted a 7x7 tile cabin and let Analbeigh get to work on it. And while we watch it build, this is a good time to introduce the final rule for this playthrough. Every other time I've played this game, I've made some fairly pedestrian, sprawling compounds. This time I want to try something extra, and for no roleplay reason whatsoever, the room that is created when this building is done will be the only room I'm going to allow on the ground level. To the skies, my vegetarian cannibals! To the skies! I added the basics that every Umanatarian needs for survival. A heat source, a place to cook, a place to sleep, a place to pray, and a place to play. Backgammon. All by oneself. Perhaps she's invented some perverse solitaire version of backgammon. On the fourth day, the first trader arrived. I traded some trees, herbs, and beds I built for a second good boy. Except the new doggo wasn't quite obedient and wouldn't be helpful by fetching and organizing materials like Velka until he was trained. With the basics taken care of, Analbeigh got to grinding out research for the rest of the winter. But on day 7, a man who was being chased by bandits appeared. Ramsey Aymar, a bloodthirsty swineherd who didn't meet the requirements for Umanatarianism. But needing a cellar and not wanting to dig a hole herself, Analbeigh told Ramsey that he should dig a hole that he could hide in when the bandits arrived. The hole was dug and the pursuers were getting very close. Analbeigh had to determine the fate of Ramsey. Let him go? Or keep him herself as, resources? Oh, Ramsey, it looks like you lost at backgammon solitaire. Sorry, these are the rules. The pursuers had arrived and left without incident, as Ramsey had, already moved on. Spring has sprung, and it was time to start putting all the winter research to good use and start with the first base expansion. Analbeigh removed the roof and started constructing towards the sky. And while this was happening, back on ground level, a wolf decided to, deconstruct the untrained dog I had purchased from the trader. What a waste. Day 2, and a new settler, Wilfred. Wait, what? Are those L's? Because that's what a lowercase I looks like in this font. Wilfred? Whatever. She was broken and bleeding, but more importantly, had all the personality needed to abide by the tenets of Umanatarianism. So Analbeigh sat on Wilfred's face and got to work healing her wounds. With her wounds healed, they double-teamed the compound expansion, and before they knew it, the library was completed. A glowing beacon of knowledge perched in the skies. Knowing that a lot of wood was going to be needed for this base, their next goal was to set up a sustainable tree farm to aid them with all their future wood needs. And what best to do but use this huge valley in front of the base for a tree farm? And what even bester to do than use it to proudly display some of the core tenets of Umanatarianism to all who approach the compound? And when the wolves kill your pet dog on top of the love in your giant wine mom art, what other option do you have but to laugh and then continue to live? But at least I was fortunate enough to have a new dog wander into my settlement no more than an hour after Velka died. Oh, never mind. Oh, so what's been happening around the base? Oh, another non-Umanatarian settler arrived who had a little accident in the forest. A shame how things go. I got my booze production up and running and started planting my new gardens. And a trader arrived and I purchased a few seeds for the gardens I was building. And on the 8th day of summer, Rickard arrived. Rickard understood the interplay between compassion, sustenance, and the cyclical nature of life, so he was welcomed with open arms. Otherwise, things were uneventful for the rest of the summer and even into the next autumn. Construction continued on the gardens, and a dog named Todd arrived. On the 6th day of autumn, another settler arrived, but he didn't have what it took to be an Umanatarian. A Warnock would be used as labor for a few days until the rest of the gang could decide what to do with him. Then, shockingly, the very next day, another settler arrived. And despite being chased by river bandits, Veneric knew how to live, laugh, and love. The wolves killed Todd the dog, which had nothing to do with the scheme Analbeigh had thought of to get some use out of a Warnock before he became food. Oh, a Warnock, you big giant! Won't you use your big axe to help protect us from these bandits that Veneric has aggroed? The bandits arrived. A Warnock, go be a hero! The Umanatarians cheered as they stood ready with their bows. Surely he would be cut down, but at least he would hold the bandits up long enough for them to be peppered with arrows. Except, the planned plan didn't go as planned. Despite a Warnock's overconfidence, he fell almost immediately and soon bled out and died. The plain wooden doors and spike traps were not enough defense for the group of bandits, and things went south real quick. By the time the horrors was over, only Analbeigh and Veneric still stood. The other Umanatarians had fallen and would become part of the cyclical nature of life. And while the fallout of this battle meant there'd be less mouths to feed and a brand new bounty of man meat to help them get through the winter, seeing their friends cut down broke both Analbeigh and Veneric. They spent the rest of the autumn wandering around in a haze, only to occasionally be broken by the need to go vomit their guts out. But after days and days of living in a dull gray world robbed of their friends, a beacon of light finally shone down upon them. Pickles the sheep was born! Rejoice! On the 4th day of winter, Analbeigh finally trained a goat, and they could once again have an animal to haul goods around the base. Huzzah! Except less than 24 hours later, it would be dead. Like, what even killed my unnamed goat? Did the autosave smite it from the earth? And with the horrors of the fall 1353 battle still in their minds, they started adding an additional ring of walls and doors that any future invader would have to smash through. Perhaps these structures can succeed in doing the job that a Warnock had failed at. Midway through the season, construction on the garden structure had finally completed, and wood collection for the next expansion began. And near the end of winter, a woman named Mabel Payne arrived, a perfect Umanatarian from the get-go. She arrived with incredible aptitude for cooking of both cabbages and man. And with spring just around the corner, the next upward base expansion began. The Umanatarians were to build a platform where both sheeps and peeps could sleep, far above the ground where many woven and bear-shaped terrors rule. In mid-spring, while roasting herself alive, Mabel drove the final nail into a bed and completed the shared chamber. No longer will they have to sleep in the dirty entryway. Summer, and a new goat has been trained to haul. Haul, baby, haul! But do I even bother naming it? Because like all my pets just end up dead immediately. Am I right? On the 3rd day of summer, a new settler arrived, bleeding from a deep gash. Oh no, Sybil, that wound looks bad. Let us make you a nice clean bed in the basement. Hang out there and we'll have you fixed up in a moment. Oh, Sybil, do haul some wood. The movement will make sure the wound doesn't fester from not moving. We'll be right there to tend the wound. Oh, Sybil, just get those mushrooms for us, and we can use it to heal you. Oh no, Sybil! Ah! With a fresh supply of invigorating mankind meat, construction was started on the next platform. Construction which was finished the next autumn. A nice workshop in the sky. A cat finally arrived, but less than a day later, I go and spend 2 minutes upgrading my doors to more durable doors for defenses, and what does some opportunistic wolf do? It just blows right past my construction and eats the cat! Jesus! Later that day, a trader arrived, and we traded some old clothing and apples for these things called eggs. Analbeigh had never experienced an egg and immediately fell in love. Her mind was further blown when she learned that they just fell out of a thing called a chicken. She was gonna need to get some of these chickens. Winter once again arrived, and I started using the beams I had placed a year ago to make a 3rd platform. Another animal/housing platform where my Umanatarians could all finally have their own private quarters. On the 3rd day, another settler arrived, a dumb non-cannibal named Demeta, who cut themselves with their axe. The Umanatarians decided to heal her and let her stay for a few days to help with some chores. A merchant arrived and had for sale some of those magical chickens that Analbeigh had been dreaming of. An old sheep was traded for a breeding pair of chickens. Finally, eggs every day for Analbeigh and her gang. A chicken pen was built in the new dormitory platform, and soon the chickens would be moved in. Except, the group had intended to turn this hole in the garden structure into a second entrance, and Veneric had started on this work. Except he built the ladder up the hole before building the door, giving a pesky polecat an opportunity to sneak in and eat my brand new girl chicken. The merchant had only brought one female chicken, so the egg dreams have been thoroughly cracked for now. Saddened by losing her chicken, Analbeigh decided it was time to make Demeta serve her purpose, and had her stand behind a merlin while Analbeigh practiced trying to hit her with a bow and arrow. Whoopsie! Didn't mean to hit you! But then, right in the middle of their training, 17 river bandits appeared outside the walls. Demeta caught an arrow that ended her, but the rest held on for hours while the new reinforced doors held the bandits at bay. Many of the bandits fell, but they still eventually broke through the base's defenses. And while still being very outnumbered, the Umanatarians had to rely on their swiftness and cardio to keep a far enough distance between the bandits and them to still keep attacking. But this couldn't be maintained forever. First, Veneric faltered and got knocked unconscious. Several hours later, Mabel and Analbeigh also finally faltered and got caught by the bandits and were both knocked unconscious. This was the end of our band of Umanatarians, except, I guess, by losing they still won the battle. I'll take it. Wounded and broken, they all had returned to the compound, bleeding all over everything. Analbeigh managed to stumble back to her bed, and an equally wounded and limping Mabel managed to reach her and apply first aid just in time to save her life, as Analbeigh only had a single drop of blood left in her body. Learning the hard way that the improved defenses were not enough, they decided to take even more drastic action. The bows they could all equip were weak because their skills were weak, so Merlins were created where pairs of the settlers could spar with each other in order to hone their skills. And yet another ring of reinforced doors and traps were laid down to further slow any advancing armies. Never again would these walls be breached, they told themselves. A man named Cannibals appeared and was taken in for a while, but not being open to Umanatarianism, he wouldn't be allowed permanent residence. Immediately in the summer, more raiders appeared. This time the defenses held and they were absolutely slaughtered mercilessly across the face of Live, Laugh, Love. And for his valor during the battle, the Umanatarians let Cannibals go alive so he didn't have to witness what was about to happen with all these fresh, delicious corpses they now had on hand. The next platform was started, and a new settler, Lena, arrived. They carried her bleeding body to the basement bed, and when she woke up, they had a few questions for her. Do you live? Yes! Do you laugh? Yes! Do you love? Yes! But will you also eat the forbidden flesh of man? Oh yeah! Lena was accepted, and she was given a proper bedroom. So remember in summer 1354, when I didn't name that goat because I expected it to just immediately die? Well, here we are over a year later, and that unnamed goat finally got. But as fate would have it, 2 days later, even more goats arrived, followed by bandits. A battle that would once again be a massacre, leaving the gang with 15 fresh slabs of yummies to fill their cannibal tummies. The temple platform was complete, and Analbeigh prayed for a second chance at owning chickens. A new cannibal named Philomena arrived, and shortly thereafter, Analbeigh got her wish as a trader showed up with another female chicken on hand. They excitedly rushed out of their compound to buy this chicken ASAP, except the chicken deal was brokered late at night, and as the chicken ownership changed hands, the chicken just fell asleep outside the safety of the walls. Now one would think that this gang of cannibals, who have slaughtered dozens of men and raised a glorious city in the sky, would be able to figure out how to wake or move a sleeping chicken. But one would be wrong. They couldn't, and the chicken got eaten. Seething with disappointment, Analbeigh trained an ass and told it to start hauling ass. Spring 1356, and it was time to start building the grandest platform of the base. The platform that would hold the grand kitchen and the even more grand Great Hall. And once again, Analbeigh's prayers were answered and another chickenmonger arrived. This time they finally didn't fuck up and safely got the chicken into the chicken pen. The Feast of Eggs can finally begin! Over the next 2 seasons, 2 more groups of bandits tried to raid the base, but both fell at the walls. The base was starting to look more and more like a factory farm for human flesh with each failed raid. And for every failed attempt, the skull of one bandit was chosen and mounted on the wall to warn others. In the middle of summer, a new Umanatarian, Haman, arrived. Then, the very next day, another settler, a normie named Molly, arrived. The gang was considering maybe letting her stay around for a while. Did you see that? She just ate raw animal meat off the ground! disgusting! For most of autumn, nothing eventful really happened. Mostly just the continued construction on the Great Hall. And later in the season, another woman appeared who would be accepted as an Umanatarian, thus giving our little colony a population of 7. Then the Great Hall was also finished, and Analbeig's heart swelled seeing all the good she had accomplished with this little colony of outcasts. But then, a chicken died. Natural causes, perhaps? Then more chickens died. Sir Barks-a-Lot was dead, and more died. All the chickens were dying. What the f***? The polecats had invaded the compound, and once again, Analbeig's dreams of chickens had been cracked. How could this have happened? Well, it appears that while building some ladders to erect some beams for the Great Hall, one of them passed close enough to a gangway that it opened up a direct path to the forest, allowing a deluge of polecats to find their way and eat all the chickens. Several of the fallen chickens, including the beloved Sir Barks-a-Lot, were mounted so they could be honored forever in the new Great Hall. On the last day of autumn, another chickenmonger arrived. We traded the bodies of the dead chickens for fresh chickens and began the quest for eggs once again. With 7 people now living in the colony, it was once again necessary to make more sleeping chambers. Stemming from the garden center, a new platform was raised which eventually contained 3 of the most elegant chambers built to date. And for the rest of the winter, the gang lived their best lives. The new chambers were comfy, the kitchens were kitcheny, and the chicken population was rebounding from the horrors inflicted by the polecat invasion. Life was good, until it wasn't. Bandits had once again shown up, but this time they weren't f***ing around. They brought trebuchets. All the archer training they had done didn't mean anything when giant rocks were breaching their base. The platform where Mabel was perched took a direct hit, and she fell to the ground outside the compound and was soon swarmed and cut down. The Umanatarians held the best they could and sent a good number of bandits down to hell. But it wasn't enough. They breached the walls, and Veneric was slain while trying to make a last stand to hold them off. And if the loss of Mabel and Veneric wasn't enough, Analbeig's heart was even further shattered as the trebuchet scored a direct hit on the chicken pen. This was not a good day. After the loss of their friends, both of feathers and of flesh, Analbeigh had come to grips with the reality that the lifestyle she was trying to cultivate was not one that the world was ready to accept. They had grown too big and had drawn too much attention to themselves, and as a result, it had ended in tragedy. The Umanatarians sadly agreed that they needed to lower their profile and lay low. So one by one, each of the survivors left the settlement to go find their own way in life. Analbeigh Canalbeigh looked at the ruins of what she had built and was the last to leave them all behind. Oh, what a story that was! Say, if you made it this far, why not drop a sub? I'm currently sitting at only 105 of them, and that's just not enough! I'll soon make a formal tour of the base I built, along with some commentary on the playthrough. When that is ready, it will appear right up here. But in the meantime, here is something else I've created that the algorithm thinks you'll be into.